But let's talk to Jake Wallis Simons, because Gary Lineker's, many people believe, overstepped the mark this time by putting up a tweet which he later deleted, which featured an emoji of a rat while he was referring to the state of Israel. Jake, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, Lineker pushes the wrong button yet again, and seems to. I think he willfully misunderstands the whole situation, doesn't he? Because I think it's wrong to say he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's clearly got it all wrong, hasn't he?
Well, I think we should say from the start that clearly Gary Lineker is not an anti-Semite. He's just one of those people who happens to make the same points that anti-Semites make quite a lot.
Yes.
And the latest occasion has been when he's retweeted or shared this post which lambasted Zionists alongside a picture of a rat. Yeah. Obviously escaped his attention. But this is true to form. I mean, his interest in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems to be quite recent. It's derives from October the 7th, actually from October the 8th. On October the 7th, he didn't tweet about the massacre in Israel at all, the Hamas massacre. He only tweeted one thing, which was Super Spurs are top of the league. Right. That was his contribution when Jews were being massacred in their hundreds and even over 1,000 on that day. And yet after that, he seems to have been very, very interested in Israel's response as it tried to defend itself against this jihadi menace, which, by the way, would kill us if it could. And his greatest hits have involved retweeting something which is called Israelis, and described them as having incomprehensible evil. He signed a letter, of course, defending that BBC documentary that was made by a Hamas son. And look, this is the man who took £1.6 million from Qatar, which is a slave state which supports Hamas. It's 300,000 Qataris lording it over literally modern slaves. And supports, is the main funder of Hamas, harbours Hamas leaders, owns Al Jazeera, which is a Hamas mouthpiece. So you can sort of see where he's coming from. It's all very unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is all very unfortunate. I was just reading a piece before we spoke of Nicole Lampert's, who put out, who's a prominent journalist, who writes an awful lot about this. She calls herself a Jewish journalist, so I'll call her that as well. She said last Thursday he posted a clip on his Instagram feed comparing Israelis to Nazis. On Saturday he posted one calling Zionists the most anti-Semitic people in the world right now, and on Sunday another one which said, as we've been saying, it didn't start on the 7th of October. And then came the rat. So it's not as if this is a one-off, which he's now being told to take down. And it's not now that it's finally sort of reached a head, if you like. I mean, he's been doing this, and she's calling it the sort of online radicalization of a footballer, which is kind of true, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's becoming football's Kanye West.
Yes.
He's only a couple of steps away, isn't he, really?
Right. He really is.
It's getting worse and worse.
And it's almost like, and this is what he did before the BBC made their decision finally to let him go. He seemed to be deliberately provocative, and you wonder whether it's because he's had a couple of glasses of wine at lunch or something, I don't know. But he seems to sort of reach into his pocket every now and again and just think, let's see what happens if I do this.
Well, look, I mean, this is, he is football's answer to Kanye West, I think, and he is becoming worse and worse. And we can see, I think, that what he's really doing is articulating a common view that's held by many at the BBC, and that's really the problem. Yeah. He feels, look, we all think this, let's just say it. And the problem is that we don't all think this, but maybe in the BBC, a lot of people do. Yeah. So he feels like he's speaking up for the majority view, which actually is a fringe minority of people who have some sympathies for, that way inclined, and rather less for the Middle East sole democracy. And he feels like he's a truth teller and a freedom fighter.
Yeah. I know, which is so misguided, and that's what I mean by the problem with somebody like him, who has got, whether we like it or not, an awful lot of influence on social media, because he's got so many followers, and so an awful lot of people see what he puts out. And, I'm not one for censorship, but I just think he's being very unwise and very stupid to fall, as you say, for the sort of Hamas propaganda lines.
Exactly, and it seems that the further you go to the left, the more likely people are to be anti-Semitic. That's just the dynamic. For some bizarre reason, that's where we find ourselves. In fact, I know why it is. It's because of Soviet propaganda during the Cold War, which has influenced that way of thinking. But like you say, for somebody with that massive platform to use it in this way, to draw attention once and again to one particular conflict in the Middle East, no other conflict in the world that claims far more lives, and not only this one conflict, but one side within it, as the Middle East's only democracy struggles to defend its people against a horrendous jihadi menace.
Right.
And yet they're the ones who he keeps criticising. It's all really a bit rum, and I think that good, right-thinking people should just turn their backs on the man, allow him to take his £1.6 million from slave state Qatar and be off with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the calls for him to be fired by the BBC will no doubt come to nothing, because the BBC probably secretly admire what he's saying.
Well, the BBC's response to any of these anti-Semitic scandals is always to go into a defensive crouch, deny, ignore, hope that it goes away, and eventually, if it's forced to, issue some compromised, mealy-mouthed apology and then carry on with business as usual.
Yeah.
I can't see any reason why it should be any different now.
No, quite. And just one final thing, Jake, before I let you go. Telegraph this morning saying that they believe that the investigation now into the firebombing of Keir Starmer's house is looking at the possibility that a sort of hostile state may well be involved. If it turns out, I'm not saying this because I don't know, but they're not revealing the nationality of this individual, a 21-year-old man who supposedly bears a grudge against Keir Starmer. My suggestion is that, it wouldn't be at all surprising if it turns out that this young individual turns out to be an asylum seeker or operating for the Iranians or something like that, in which case this becomes a much more serious story, and I think we surely should be told more detail of what we now know about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a counter-terror operation, so of course it's going to have to be shrouded in secrecy, although as we saw with the Southport debacle, sometimes that secrecy is taken way too far.
Yeah.
But look, we can't preempt the results of this inquiry, but if it is an Iranian, it wouldn't be any surprise. The Iranian Terror Overseas Militia, the IRGC, operates in Britain, we know that. In fact, a security source told me about a year ago that it was the main threat that keeps them awake at night above all other threats in Britain. And yet it's not banned here. We haven't banned it because we want to keep diplomatic channels open with Iran. And look, that's a whole other debate, but basically this terror group is able to operate without being banned in Britain. It's carried out more than 20 assassination and murder plots in Britain over the last year or so. Right. Recently, one major one was foiled on the Israeli embassy, and the government seems to be playing catch-up. Now, I know that the Iranians, after this latest one was foiled a couple of weeks ago, the Iranians were very worried that Britain was going to snap back sanctions on the regime, was going to expel its diplomat, was going to take actual action, and yet we did nothing. They were scared of that, but they didn't need to be scared because we took no action. And so I think that we do need to be toughening up, and if this does turn out that it is an Iranian attack, then it will come as no surprise and will be really a sign of British complacency in the face of this Iranian terror threat.
Exactly right. Jake Wallis Simons, thank you very much indeed for talking to us, author of Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It.